Welcome. In this video, we're going to walk through the analytics feature of Pivotal Tracker. When you click on analytics, you'll see that your sidebar changes and you have all of the different options available to you that are applicable to analytics. On the project overview, we have some general trends for the project as a whole, and you can scroll down and see some recent releases and some recent epics. Clicking on View Report for some of these individual reports will take you to some of the same reports that are on the sidebar. But let's start with the project overview. The first one that you'll see under Project Trends is Velocity and Points Accepted, and I'm going to click on View Report for that. This report will show you at the top the number of points that you have accepted on the blue bar, and then the red line indicates the calculation for the running velocity. So as we accepted, here there was a downward trend, perhaps due to summer vacations, where we accepted fewer points each iteration. You'll see that the running velocity, and up here it tells you that velocity is being calculated on the last 3 iterations. So you'll see that the running velocity being calculated was going down. Then, as our trend of accepting points started to go up, you'll see that that running velocity began going up with it. So this is again just letting you see iteration over iteration, how many points we accepted each iteration, and what was our calculated velocity for each iteration, and what that trending is. Also useful on this report up at the top is a calculation for the team's volatility. Volatility lets you know how consistent the team is iteration over iteration. And that calculation is based on the same past 3 iterations, or it uses the same setting that velocity does. So volatility is being calculated on your past 3 iterations as well. A low volatility number indicates that the team is very consistent iteration over iteration, and it means that the predictions that Tracker is making for when work is going to be done should be fairly accurate. A high volatility number indicates that the team has some inconsistency or a bit more range from iteration to over iteration, and those estimates should maybe be considered a little more fluid. As you scroll down, and if you click on some of those different iterations up at the top, you can actually see the breakdown of features, bugs, and chores for each of those iterations. So for example, if we were looking at the September 2nd iteration and we wanted to see why is it that we only accepted 1 story point, well, we can see we actually worked on 5 features that iteration. They were obviously just very small features that were probably 0 points, but it wasn't that the team wasn't doing anything that particular iteration. We also worked on 3 bugs and 1 chore, and those are typically not pointed. So it lets us see what was going on in the past. And if we'd like, we can actually go and select those previous iterations and see exactly what those stories were. So this is really helpful for going back and seeing what the team has worked on in the past and how things are progressing iteration over iteration. Let's go back to the project overview. So we've talked about the stories accepted and the breakdown by features, bugs, and chores. I'd like to talk about the burn up. And this is actually showing you from the very start of the project till now, the total point scope. So we can see the points accepted and the total number of points that we have planned. So this kind of gives you that bird's eye view of what the team has been doing iteration over iteration. And again, we see our recent releases and recent epics. If you would like to see the burn up by state, switch over to the cumulative flow, and that will actually break it down for you by story state: accepted, rejected, delivered, finished, and unstarted. And again, you can hover over different points and see the different values there. One more I'd like to point out on the project overview before we move on is the rejection rate. Rejection rate will show you a calculation based on how often stories are rejected. A high rejection rate may indicate that the team needs a little bit more help on understanding acceptance criteria if they're not meeting that information. And if you come up here, clicking on that took us to the cycle time report on the sidebar. And at the top, you'll see that we have several different ways that we can look at this information. I'm going to switch to cycle time by state, and that'll give you a report of cycle time by state. And then down at the bottom, we can again select any of those previous 12 iterations that we would like and see our stories and how long they spent in each state. So the cycle time column shows us our story's total cycle time from start to finish, and then we can see it by individual state. So here's how long the story spent after we clicked start, before we clicked finish. Here is how long the story spent after we clicked finish, before we clicked deliver. And here is how long the story spent after we click deliver, before we click either accept or reject. The reject column will be blank if the story was never rejected. Here's a story that was rejected. And you can see that right here because it shows that it had one rejection. This report can be really useful if you're looking for bottlenecks in your process and you just want to help stories move through the flow just a little bit faster and go from started to accepted. If we want to look at our epics report, this will show all of the epics that we've been working on. And again, we can see the breakdown of stories. And we can look at that by story point or total number of stories, whichever that you prefer. And then see where our epics are. So we can see the number of accepted stories. And again, the status bar is color coded. So accepted indicates green, yellow indicates in progress, gray indicates unstarted, and blue indicates icebox stories. Tracker will also show you its estimated completion date, but remember that estimated completion date is based on your planned work. Since we have 2 stories that are still currently in the icebox, we'll need to get those planned as well and know that that may impact the estimated completion date if that work pushes it out just a little bit further. You can also click on View Report and get more details about what this epic is being developed against and see a burn down for, or a burn up for the individual epic. But this shows us that we are 60% complete, where the stories are in status, and then we can see the burn up from when this was completed. Many of these reports, if you look in the upper right corner, will have the ability to print, and some will have the ability to export to CSV. So make sure you look for those icons if you're wanting to export data outside of Tracker. And then we can drop down and see the stories in the various states that are a part of this epic. And then the release report has similar information. You can see it based on stories, or you can see it based on points, and it will show you releases. You can view a burn down of the release and then see the total number of points, the points remaining. If you had put a scheduled date on the release, you would see your scheduled date and then Tracker's estimated completion. Story activity will give you a very detailed report based on an iteration or custom dates if you would like to enter specific dates. You can choose all story types, or if you would like, just features or just bugs or just chores. and you can choose an activity level of how much information you would like to see. But it gives you a report of all changes that have happened and who has made those changes. So it can be a really useful thing to see what has gone on within your project. So that gives you some visibility into the tracker analytics. This is for an individual project. If you're wanting to look across multiple projects, you may want to look at tracker workspaces. Workspaces don't have an analytics section, but they will let you open panels side by side, and you can check how multiple projects are doing all at once. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out our other videos to learn more.